U.S. lawmakers also overwhelmingly voted to pass a bill that could ban TikTok in the country. Let's take a deeper look at that proposed legislation. Joining us live is Stephen Okun. He's founder and CEO of APEC Advisors. Mr. Okun, it's not TikTok's fault. It is so popular. It's got 170 million sign-ons in America alone. I think private independent researchers would say it is no more, no less aggressive than any other, I suppose, ambitious social media platform in collecting data from users. Why is TikTok considered a national security risk and, say, not Twitter?
Well, I think the starting point isn't that this is a TikTok ban. This is a ByteDance ban. This is a ban on ByteDance, which the members of the Congress and the members of the Biden administration believe it is controlled or has to answer to the Chinese Communist Party, that this company, ByteDance, should not have access to all of this U.S. privacy data, nor should it have access to such a powerful media company that can control a lot of the debate that goes on and frame the debate that goes on in the U.S. when it comes to news. And so there's a national security risk, is what the Congress has found, with ByteDance owning TikTok. So this is not a ban on TikTok. It is a divestiture that ByteDance would have to do for TikTok to remain in the United States.
So it's ByteDance, a Chinese company, which under China's national intelligence law in 2017, it would, by law in China, be required to hand over any information demanded by the Chinese government. That is what poses this national security risk.
Yeah, that is what the Congress has found, and what President Biden, when he signs this legislation, will have found is one of the two national security risks. So one of those risks is that the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, can access all of this data. That's part one. Part two is that presumably there is also the reverse fear, which is that the party could order TikTok to put forth disinformation into the United States. It could be about elections and campaigns. It could be to create social divisiveness. And so that is the dual fear that occurs, why this is seen as a national security threat, why it passed the Senate by, a vote of 70, I think it was 79 to 18. Overwhelmingly bipartisan support. And it's why President Biden is going to sign it. So there's two national security threats seen here. And that the fix is get rid of the ownership and control by ByteDance, and through that, the government and the Communist Party. And then TikTok is no different than Facebook or Twitter or Reels or any other number of social media platforms that operate in the U.S.
So in other words, for example, Twitter or social media platforms can and have been used. There's multiple cases of that for disinformation purposes. But the idea is, as you say, to take out the Chinese factor in this. So control it, as we have done, as others have done when it comes to, for example, using Twitter for disinformation purposes.
Yeah, and so the social media has a lot of issues that face it, but one of the things that the social media firms like Twitter, like Facebook have done is to try and stop disinformation from going forth on their platforms, whereas the fear here is that the ownership would be the source of the disinformation. It would be the genesis of the disinformation. And so that's the concern that you have with ByteDance's ownership of TikTok versus the ownership, the publicly traded companies in the U.S. headquartered companies that you have with, X, the former Twitter and Facebook. And so that's the distinction, isn't that any social media can be used for disinformation. It's who's going to be the genesis of it, and will it be stopped through those platforms? And that's why this legislation really only addresses TikTok, and it doesn't address, Facebook or X or others that are owned and operated in the U.S.
Of course, TikTok has already said it will launch a legal challenge to this, and likely one, I suppose, fairly fertile ground is infringement of users' First Amendment rights. So legally, leaving aside anything else, do you think this will clear?
Well, I mean, we've got a long ways to go. So we've got the legal issues now that the law has passed and will soon be signed, if it hasn't already this morning. Now TikTok will presumably ask for an injunction so that the enforcement and the clock doesn't start running to force this divestiture. And they will make any number of arguments on the constitutionality of this law. They will make the argument on behalf of their users that this violates their First Amendment rights, that they should have the right to a platform like TikTok, no different than they have a right to Facebook or others. And they'll make the argument that TikTok is better and more effective. I think they probably have a strong argument to make that it is better and more effective. The question is whether it violates the free speech rights of the users. They'll make an argument that the law is unjustified, that you can't have Congress pass a law against a single company. Now, this law has been tweaked, working with the Justice Department
all right.
to try and make sure that the law passes
many entanglements, Mr. Okun, I'm sorry to cut in, but a final question here. This is election year. Former President Trump earlier tried to ban TikTok, and now he's backpedaling on that. He's saying if it should be banned, he has, quote, called it Mr. President Biden's responsibility. How will this be used as a tool in an election year? Very quickly, final question.
Well, one of the biggest demographics that the Biden and Trump campaign are fighting over are young voters, basically from the age of 18 to 30, who are the core TikTok users. And President Trump wants to try and peel off as many of those voters who naturally tend to go Democratic, tended to go President Biden in the last election. He wants to peel them off. He wants to use this against President Biden to say that President Biden is against those voters. He's against that demographic. He wants them to, if not vote for Trump, stay at home. And so that is why you see Trump flip-flop on this, where the Trump administration tried to ban TikTok. But now that the Biden administration is signing the law to do it, Trump is in favor of keeping TikTok to try and make it a way that he can get just enough votes to become president once again.
I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again about this soon, Mr. Stephen Okun, because this story will run and run. Founder and CEO of APAC Advisors. Thank you.